Welcome to the Ministry Chick Network podcast, where we encourage, equip, and empower women of faith to lead with clarity, confidence, and purpose. I'm your host, Melissa Mashburn, the Chief Encouragement Officer here at the Ministry Chick Network. And today I am joined by Dr. Deb Walkemeyer. She's a co-pastor, strategic catalyst for multiplication, a therapist, author, and a community leader. Actually, there's so much more that we didn't even cover in that. And for more than 30 years, Deb and her husband, Larry, have led a nationally recognized, multiplying, multi-ethnic church that is making a global impact. It is amazing the work that God is doing in and through them. If you've ever wondered what it takes to multiply disciples, flourish in marriage while leading in ministry, oh yeah, we've all wondered, or transform your community through kingdom creativity, you won't want to miss this conversation. So let's dive in. First of all, Deb, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks for inviting me on. It really is an honor to be able to come on in the beginning of your new podcast, which is so exciting. I love it.
I'm excited to have you. Well, for those that are meeting you for the first time, I did your intro. It's super impressive and all of those incredible things. But if for people that are meeting you for the first time, can you share a little bit about yourself, family, ministry journey, maybe even your role at Light in Life?
Yeah. Okay. Well, been married 47 years. That means I'm really old. And yeah, I can't believe we're almost 50,
That's not true.
50 years. And then we were, in our early years of marriage, we were youth pastors. And I thought for sure we were going to be youth pastors forever until God called us to Light in Life Christian Fellowship in Long Beach in 91. And it was a super clear calling. He called each of us individually, which was pretty crazy because we were planning on going to a different church. But during that time, I had gotten my bachelor in psychology at APU, met Larry. The rest is history. And when I graduated, we moved to Seattle and we were in Bible college there, had our daughter, Lindsay. And then after 11 years in Seattle, our church fell apart. We ended up starting a nonprofit for teenagers and wanted to get more education and more credibility with starting a nonprofit. So we went back to Southern California, where I grew up, and went back to school. That's when I became a marriage family therapist. And so my practice was at the beginning of Light in Life, which is crazy. So really, I didn't do a whole lot on the senior pastor front. In fact, when they interviewed Larry, I said, don't hire him to be the senior pastor. I don't want to be a senior pastor's wife, because I knew I had a different ministry, but God had a different idea. So we got there, and I actually then got ordained in 1998 and left my marriage family practice. 99 came on staff, worked part-time almost my entire career at Light in Life, except a little teeny bit of it. Oversaw small groups, support recovery, a lot of different things. And then in 2005, started my doctoral work at Fuller. And that was very life-changing for me, actually. And I would say that is what has propelled me into where I am now. So in 1992, we handed the keys to the car of the church to Pastor Sean and Pastor Joelle. And we transitioned out into full-time with the Free Methodist Church nationally in as strategic catalyst for multiplication. So really trying to pass on that multiplication DNA and ethos in our denomination.
Well, that's amazing. And it has been a recurring theme in many ways. Now, what I love is that you've had so many roles. Pastor, therapist, author, gardener, that's a whole nother story, business owner. And how do you describe the heartbeat that ties all these together?
Well, I don't know if it's a heartbeat, but I'm weird. That's what I always thought about myself. And I was so weird because I am a creative. And those things just boil within me. I love Jesus, and I love working with youth, and I love empowering people. I mean, that's kind of like my theme. And watching people be transformed by Jesus. And so it was when I started my D-Min program, I was in a class with Reggie McNeil, took a whole bunch of inventories, and he had us one afternoon go sit at Starbucks or go somewhere and sit with our inventory results and just process. I was sitting in Starbucks and I just start weeping as I'm reading my strengths inventory, my brain mapping, all these different things that I had taken. And I'm like, I make sense. I finally make sense.
Yeah.
And then when God called me for my doctoral work to plant the first community garden in Compton, that then kind of brought it all full circle. And then when in 2012, I took over our community center, the leadership of our new community center. And then everything exploded from there. I mean, from the creative to everything else. So it was honestly just a journey with the Holy Spirit, getting to know myself, getting to know his heartbeat for my life, and then just saying yes to whatever he sent my way.
Yeah, I think what's so incredibly encouraging about all the different roles that you've had and all the different things is it's not weird. It's actually beautiful because it gives hope, right? It gives us hope that I like the phrase, they call it a multi-passionate woman. Because for a long time they said, Jill of all trades, master of none, and you got to do one thing and do one. I don't believe that that's the norm anymore. And I honestly believe that God has given us all of these different gifts and skills and passions that make us so uniquely us. And so when you put in the master gardener and you put in the author and you put in just the pastor, the therapist, and all these other things, they're what make you unique. But this blend is really beautiful. So I think that's encouraging is what I'm trying to get at, is not you got to have, I think that's one of my biggest frustrations for some of the younger people, is this whole pressure of I've got to figure out my life and I've got to declare my major when I'm 14. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. I didn't know what I wanted to do until I was 30, and I'm still figuring it out.
Me too, at my age.
So if for those listening, please hear, there's hope. And all of these things are not random. They're not random. God has put them in your heart for a reason. Start, like Deb said, take some time and reflect and see, why are all of these pieces and parts that seemingly don't make sense a part of my life? Right? I love that. So you were talking about, didn't want Larry to, take the job and all of that stuff. I feel that. I didn't want that for my husband either. I was like, no, I think God just called me, not you. We both can't do that. But let me ask you this. What first drew you into ministry leadership alongside Larry, and how, in the middle of all of these other things that are going on, how did you discern that call?
Yeah. It's actually been a series of calls in my life, honestly. Okay. When I was in college, I thought I was going to be a nurse. I'm the first dropout of the first nursing program at APU. So that's my claim to fame. Azusa Pacific University, I'm their first dropout in the nursing program. But you know what? I didn't have good role models and mentors who were guiding me along the way. My parents hadn't gone to college, so they didn't know how to do that either. And I just was more about having fun in life. And so Enneagram 7 here. So, hey, that was my passion. And it was really hard. But when I gave my life to Jesus, going into 7th grade, the next year at camp, I was very compelled by the Spirit to really rededicate my life. And I remember clearly sitting on the floor, just sobbing and going, Jesus, whatever you want. So in high school, I got very active in Youth for Christ. And that was the first experience I had of being identified as a leader and getting poured into as a leader. It was that I see in you conversation, but it wasn't that clear. I wish it would have been I see in you this, but instead it was just giving me more and more opportunities. And that's when I had my passion for youth ministries. So when I met Larry, it was in my 4th year at Azusa Pacific. I thought for sure that I was going to be working with youth just as a volunteer, or maybe with Youth for Christ. And I did not see myself as a lead pastor. So when we moved to Seattle, we're in Bible college, we were in youth ministries for 11 years. And that's what we did. And I was actually more of the volunteer during that time. So it wasn't this professional call, but my heart call was to the youth. So then we started the nonprofit when the church fell apart. And then from there, when we went back to school in Southern California, I had a dream. I didn't want to go back to Southern California, but I had a dream, and God said, go tell Larry you want to go back to school too, and you want to go for an MFT. And I didn't really hear from the Lord. So then that was that call. But then it was Larry that really helped me discern the calling into full-time ministry. And through a lot of conversations and prayer and processing, that's when I realized, yeah, I'm not going to be a therapist forever. I felt like God called me to the broader church context to bring healing into that context. And so then when I came on staff, it was a journey. And it hasn't always been easy. And sometimes I'm like, was I crazy? But but the Lord has always been faithful to show me, no, you are where you need to be.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Well, and what I keep hearing is not only through the series of calls in your life, there are different seasons of life from, the therapists and all of these different roles that you've had. How do you, I mean, this is a long ministry career in a lot of different places, but all with the same heartbeat, right? So how do you stay clear on your mission when there are seasons of change? Because let's face it, there are some things about ministry that are always the same. There's always Christmas, there's always Easter, there's always January, there's always the September restart and all that. Like, so there's some tent poles, but the rest of it, there's a lot of change that happens in what it looks like. So how do you stay clear on your mission in those seasons of change?
Well, it's actually not always easy, because when God called us to plant churches at Light and Life, in 99, we planted our first church. That was when we started sending out leaders galore and sending them out on mission to plant churches. And so here I was raising up leaders, and then suddenly I lose about 25% of my leadership base. And I'm like, oh my word, this is rough stuff. I don't know if I like this. But I knew that that's what God called us to. And I think it's when you are clear on where you are called, even though it may feel fuzzy at times, you can hang on to that and say, no, God's called me. Now, what was interesting, I think the darkest time of my leadership career at Light and Life was in 2006, when I went through a dark night of the soul. I can tell you exactly when it happened. And the devil planted this thought in my head that I was not a leader, but God created me to be Larry's wife and Lindsay's mom. That was my role. And I began to parrot that. So I took the lie, I parroted it. And at that was at a point in my life where I didn't stay the course. I would just kind of pull back and do the bare minimum. I wouldn't step out at church, or if I was asked to do other things, there was like, no way, I'm not doing that. I'm not a leader. I was trying to work myself out of a job because I saw myself as not being a leader. And then 18 months later, a lot of processing and praying and journaling and feeling lost. Lord, I had a watershed moment. The Lord broke the lie. And then it was a few months later that in my journaling and processing, I heard from him, you're not a leader. You're a leader of leaders. And that's when I heard that, that just planted a stake in the ground that said, from this point forward, I am a leader of leaders. So sometimes we have to go through these crucibles. We have to go through these dark nights of the soul. Because if I hadn't gone through that process, when God used me to start the Compton Community Garden, I actually would have imploded, because so much of the recognition was going to everybody else but me. Yet it was my hard work and my dissertation. Even though I worked with my teams, I was like, what? They don't even know my name. They still don't know my name. And I'm like, is it about me, or is it about the kingdom? What am I going to do about this? But if I hadn't done that deep work in my soul, I think I would have totally destroyed the garden.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. That's powerful. And I appreciate you walking us through that. It wasn't a quick fix. It wasn't like, okay, and then, I had this hard moment, and, and then God came in, yay. And it sounded like you really had to wrestle with this, and walk away from a lot of self stuff, right?
Yeah.
What you did say, which is very interesting, is that the lie was that I'm not a leader. And so fascinating, because over the last 2 years, this is a lot of the research that I've been doing with Ministry Chick Network. That is a recurring theme, that a lot of women do not believe that they are, quote unquote, a leader. Why do you think, we're going off road here, but why do you think that that's so pervasive to what looks like on the outside a very strong, capable, competent woman that is dealing with this internal, I'm not a leader?
We are our own worst enemies, for one.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, I think for women, because there is research shows there's a lack of resourcing for women.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lack of sponsorships for them in the corporate world. There, especially in a more paternalistic type of vocation as ministry,
Right.
it is really easy to not see yourself as a leader. We don't even have a lot of role models
Right.
for women to see themselves possibly doing something like that in the future. And
Right.
so that contributes. And then
That's
if
fair.
we don't have good mentors, we don't have good spiritual directors or friends who can speak into our lives and
Mm-hmm.
say, this is what I see. And if we don't invite them into
Right.
that conversation,
Right.
then we set ourselves up for the enemy's tactics. And that was one thing I did. I believed the enemy's lie. I parroted it to others. And then I did not believe that. I just said, I don't believe you. When my friends told me, you're a leader, my husband, my daughter, everybody,
Right.
I chose. And that
Yeah.
was my sin. I chose to believe
Wow,
the
that's
lie.
good.
It was safer, honestly, than to step out and say I'm
I
a leader.
understand.
And,
Yeah.
I've been pioneering, I feel like, for women for decades in this whole leader arena. And I have now taken it on as a mission to do whatever I can to help women move into a place of flourishing and empowerment.
I love that. And we've met in spaces like that. That's how we even got connected. So
Yes.
I've seen you live this out. I've been the recipient of that myself. So thank you for just taking up that charge and investing in others. So as you step into these global catalytic roles, what legacy, this is a perfect segue to this question, what legacy do you hope to leave for women leaders, especially women leaders in ministry spaces?
Yeah. Well, for a long time, I led women. And then I really felt like at Light in Life, I really need to be pouring into men too. And I was doing most of the leader development work at Light in Life. So I felt like I tasked myself with that. I saw a need and I tasked myself with that. But then God woke me up at Exponential 2015 when it was all about disciple making. And I realized that I had failed in my leader development, leader discipleship, because I was not teaching them to go and do the same. It wasn't multiplicative.
Yeah.
And so then I went home, and that's when I was really stirred that women, they don't even start on the ladder. They start under the first rung of the ladder.
In the pool.
In the pool.
The ladder. Yeah.
Desperate. And I'm going to do whatever I can to focus on those leader of leader women who need support.
Yeah.
Because there isn't that much, especially in our denomination, sadly.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't get it, but I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that this changes. And so I'm trying to create this empowerment culture. So my legacy now, as I'm older, I think about legacy.
Yeah.
And one thing that has really stirred me is that before, I guess I wanted name the Compton Garden after me or something so people remember me or whatever it was, the things that I did. And I realize now it's not about me at all. I
Mm-hmm.
want my legacy, even if no one knows my name, I want my legacy to be those who I empowered to be hero makers. I'm going to be a hero maker. And whether they ever know my name or not, it doesn't matter. I want to see others become heroes in God's unfolding story. And so that is what I hope my legacy is, that women will choose to take up the mantle of discipling other women leaders and teaching them how to go and do the same. So, and leaders birth leaders. A follower can't birth a leader. They can't develop a
Oh,
leader. A
right.
leader needs to develop leaders. And so
Right.
that's what I want my legacy to be. A
Mm.
tribe of women empowered on mission with Jesus, whatever God is calling them to do.
Amen. Amen. That's incredible. And I'm with you. I get that. I'm in that legacy phase myself. And that's really the heartbeat of what we're doing here at Ministry
Yeah.
Chick Network, is to really just um I always say, they talk about the broken rung on the ladder and stuff like that. Our goal is to replace some of those rungs that are broken so that you
Yes.
can basically step on our back, like step on our back and keep going. Because
I love it.
I don't want you to get stuck in some of the things. I don't want you to have to take 20 years to figure out things when you can get so much further ahead. So I love that. So you've spoken about this several times. You've talked about the ICNUs. You've talked about multiplication, but multiplication really is a core leadership value for you. So
Yeah.
why is that so vital for the church today?
Well, if you read Genesis 1, multiplication is the first commandment. Go and
Yeah.
reproduce. The world could not get filled with people if we did not do our part. And
Right.
so from the get-go, the creative order has been multiplying.
Mm.
Seeds, being a gardener, the seeds within every single seed is the DNA to
Mm.
reproduce, and not just reproduce one single plant,
Mm.
but a seed-bearing tree, seed-bearing fruit and vegetables. What happens when one plant grows? Multiple fruit or vegetables
Mm.
are grown, and within them are several seeds with that
Right.
same DNA. I mean, if you look, you just have to look at the creative order to see that it's set up
Yeah.
on multiplication. Then
Wow.
Jesus came. Jesus could have said, "Here I am," thrown up his revival tents.
Yeah.
He could have gathered the crowds. He didn't intentionally try, they just showed up. But what did Jesus do? He spent about 73% of his ministry time, 3.5 years, with just 12 scruffy dudes. And most of
Yeah.
them were probably under 20 years old.
Yeah.
And they're going to start this global movement. And so he's like, "You're not going to throw up picture tent and have the crowd come. What
Mm.
you're going to do is relationally,
Yeah.
one after another, you are going to be pouring into the next generation." And we see in Titus 2:2 where it's Paul tells Timothy to teach the faithful and the faithful to teach others. It
Yeah.
was this passing on. And
Yeah.
that is how it's happened. And multiplication looks very slow. And so people don't like it and they give up,
Right.
because after a couple of years, it's like, "Oh, I only discipled 4 people. There's nothing else happening here. It doesn't feel like I've done anything for the kingdom."
Mm.
But if they go and do the same,
Right.
I have been doing for the denomination 3 years now, just small mentor leader discipleship groups. And there's at the end of this year in December, there'll be 41 who have been through this. If they all go and each just do one a year, in about 5 years, we will have about 1,300 women mentored and
Wow.
discipled and empowered into
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. It's It's so fascinating because I'm in seminary currently. One of my classes is on disciple making,
Yeah.
and it's so different than discipleship in a lot
Mhm.
of ways, and it has really um, challenged my way of thinking and understanding. It's not about getting 25 people in a discipleship class for 10 weeks. it's
Yep.
it's about a lifelong journey of walking with somebody and
Yes.
and and doing life with them and being present. And so I love that you're talking in this vein as part of this multiplication and how it not only impacts the church, it impacts the disciples too.
Yeah.
So which is us, right?
Yes.
I want to talk about, because we've tiptoed around this whole community garden, then you threw out Compton and all of this other stuff. And I know the story, but y'all, you got to hear. So, your community initiatives
Hmm.
like the Compton Community Garden have gained national recognition. What can women leaders learn about engaging in their local communities with creativity and purpose? Because this is a way outside the box. Like, this isn't something that you go to church and it's on like the forum of ways you can
Yeah.
get involved. This is another way that God laid something on your heart and you were obedient with it.
Yeah. Well, that was the first step. God put it on my heart to, at first at Light and Life in 2010, there was this strip of land. I've always
Mm.
grown flowers, but I've not grown food. And all of a sudden, I had a mission teams coming, and I said, I want to put a garden in this strip of 120 feet long, 11 feet wide. In a week, I had a garden. What was I going to do with it? I had no idea. That was crazy. I wasn't even leading the community center. But then it just became this whole morphed into this whole ministry that I was leading at the church. And then I went and became a master gardener because I thought I got to learn how to really do this well. And we had a school on our site at that time, a middle
Mm.
school, a charter school with kids who were under the 32 percentile testing range in school. They were kicked out. Nobody wanted these kids.
Mm.
They were rough. And
Right.
I started working with the school and the garden and teaching gardening classes and cooking and all of this stuff to these kiddos. And
Wow.
then I'm in this doctoral program praying for years, Lord, what is my final project? And on the corner of Lakewood and Del Amo, he goes, plant a community garden. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So I go process with my minister in the hood with me, Sarah. I said, this sounds crazy. She goes, no, Pastor Deb, that's exactly what the hood needs. Do it. And I thought I was going to do it in Long Beach, but God called me to Compton instead. And
Wow.
so here I am in Compton. And because of saying yes to a really hard task, because I had never driven in Compton, I don't look like the people. And this was the most gang-ridden area where all the
Yeah.
prostitution happens and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no clue what I'm doing here. And then I got a partner from a team at our church who were incarnational in Compton. Together, 6 months we had a garden, and we invited the mayor to be a part of our open house. And the mayor loved what we were doing. And because that was part of her platform, we got in right away. And
Wow.
then I used to go with our councilman in Long Beach, and I'd say have coffee with him or his chief of staff, and I'd say, "What do you need? How can
Wow.
we be a blessing? How can
Yeah.
we be?" I'd say that exact word, and they would say, "Well, we need blah blah blah." And I did the same with the person who oversaw the faith-based council for Department of Children and Family Services. I asked Adele, what do you need?
Wow.
And together we dreamed. And I was just people threw money at me. I didn't even have
Wow.
to ask. Do this for us. Do this for us. So it was a matter of making myself available
Yeah.
and then saying yes, and not being afraid of the work, and
Mm.
then bringing teams of people around me where we did it together, whether they were community leaders or they
Yeah.
were people in our own church.
That's good. That is so good. But then what happened?
Well, with the Compton Community Garden, we went for 10 years. And when COVID hit, this is when I had to once again humble myself because we were deemed in LA County the city of Compton made us an essential business so that people could get food. And so there was a young Black guy who grew up in Compton who was passionate about food. And he said, "Can I take the garden?" And I go, I couldn't, I could only go occasionally because I had a knee replacement during that time. So I was like, okay, Tim, go for it. Tim started leading the garden. And a couple years ago, Alan, who owned the land, we always knew he might put it up for sale. We have always tried to buy it. He put up a big sign. And these young leaders, not Tim, but different young leaders who were leading the garden, were livid. Did a whole social media campaign, stormed city council on a Tuesday night, and said, "This garden is our land." 140 people show up. This is our garden. You can't let the developers take it away from us.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there. Bob, my partner, was there, and Dr. Ross was there. And Dr. Ross spoke, and he's been like our face of the garden. Grew up in Compton, neurosurgeon, retired. And he was the one who kind of was the face because he was a native to Compton. And he spoke, and everyone was like, "Oh my word, we have to keep this garden." So long story short, connected with the LA Land Trust, and money was raised at $500,000, and they bought the garden, and the people own it, and Dr. Ross is the executor of it. And I don't even have my hands in it anymore because it's owned by the people.
Yeah.
And they have taken it over, which is beautiful. And then in the community theater, which we started in the community center, we started in 2012. That became a nonprofit at about 2018. And now Travis is leading it. It's been going since 2012. And here is this, it's the largest free theater program for youth in all of Southern California. And it's still going and very active and having a great impact in our city.
I have goosies. I have goosies. That's so amazing. One faithful yes, even when it doesn't make sense. And to be able to walk into it with just open hands. That had to be hard because you did the work, you did the play, became a master gardener to, all of these pieces and parts. Which it's just a reminder that the work that we do is what we're called to do, but it's not who we are.
That's right.
And so I'd just like to ask one last question. So for anybody that's been listening and they've been hearing your story and what we're going through today, what is one small, I love me a good practical step, one small practical step that a listener can take this week to start living more missionally?
There's lots of thoughts, of course, that I have. Hold all things loosely. Trust God to give you the plan. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, I live by that passage. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. And then just pursue that next yes. You don't have to have the end product figured out. And don't take yourself too seriously, honestly.
Right.
Just realize it's okay. You're going to fail. I failed at so many things. I could tell you a ton of failure things too, even though I've had a lot of success, a lot of failures.
Right.
But don't be afraid to take a risk. I mean, that's a lot of little nuggets. But
that's so good. And I think I know you well enough that you said something like, don't take yourself so seriously. I'm going to add on another one for Dr. Deb because I actually know this about her. Have fun. Like have fun along the way. She has the most fun of anybody I know. I look at her social media and I'm like, I want to be you. I just want to be you when I grow up. Cause I'm like, cause you're cool. But not only that, like you have fun everywhere she goes. She has fun. Well, thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful for you, for your friendship, for your leadership, for the way that you have mentored me, even if you didn't know it, you have, and just really been a good friend. And she gives great hugs too. So, and gosh, friends, if you are listening today and you were encouraged by our conversation with Dr. Deb, I just want to say thank you for listening. One thing that really stood out to me and encouraged me, and I was taking notes. So if I'm looking down, I was taking notes and stuff. Couple of things that you said. I love empowering people. You talked about the series of calls in your life. I think that's really good and something I'm going to continue to chew on. And then just the reminder for anybody that has wrestled with, you're not a leader. The fact that God gave you, you are a leader of leaders, that's gold. So if you want to connect with Deb or learn more about what she does, we'll be adding her contact info in the show notes. And if today's conversation stirred something in you, I want to invite you to download the free Clarity Journal. It's a 5-day resource to be able to walk through, like, what is God saying? What is my next step? Why am I wrestling with this? It's going to give you some more clarity, completely free. It's there to help you take your next step with confidence, especially after a great conversation today. The link for that will also be in the show notes. And remember this, friends, you don't have to lead alone. That's exactly why the Ministry Chick Network exists. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time on the Ministry Chick Network podcast.